Hey everybody, Michael Snyder here, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today's January 6th, coming up on 10:30 a.m. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the potential return to colder weather later in the period for Pacific Northwest. And we're going to check out the flooding potential that's occurring now, and we're going to look at some potential for some strong winds through the region also. Still a lot going on. And this is the current weather right now. You can see the Arctic air intruding into the eastern portions of the country, and that's allowed the Pacific Northwest to warm up also, kind of that yin and yang thing going on. When one half of the country cools down, the other warms up, and vice versa. So taking a look at the current satellite here, you can see the atmospheric river coming right into the Pacific Northwest. And we've got a long way to go before this clears out. And this bullseye of precip is actually spread north a bit more, and they've included some places of Bellingham can get more of an inch of rain, and Seattle South over 2 inches, and of course higher totals in the higher terrain of the Cascades and the coastal ranges. So just kind of before we dive into the flooding here, check out Bellingham, still in the mid-20s, mid and upper 20s out there. You can see that valley there has trapped that cold air, and they're still getting reinforcement from that northeast wind. Check out the terrain to the east has actually gone above freezing or just at freezing in most of the areas. So heads up if you're traveling up towards Ferndale and Bellingham today, Whatcom County, as they are still below freezing, and any precip that moves over that can fall as freezing rain. Checking out the atmospheric river outlook here, you can see that we're already about 6 to 12 hours into the event, and if you go 18, 24, 36, 42 hours, we're looking at a pretty strong atmospheric river event here. So the precipitation totals on top of melting snow, on top of this very saturated ground right now leads to some extreme runoff. So we'll look at some of those totals coming up here. Here's a recent European model also, and you can see we just have a ways to go before we get out of this precip for Western Washington especially. And then you can see the low move across and kind of cast a strong gradient across the Oregon coast there, and then on into Western Washington a bit. So we're going to take a look at some of those wind speeds here too. So let's dive into some of those wind speeds right now. Here's the Oregon coast. You can see some pretty good winds along there. Some gusts over 50 miles per hour for Southwest Washington. With all the rain they're getting and saturated soils, it could bring some trees down. So heads up there, mid-40s through the Puget Sound. Powerful westerly winds down the strait into Whidbey Island. This is up till Friday afternoon. So heads up there, we could get some nuisance power outages. And of course the higher terrains, and actually the Portland and Willamette Valley might get a good gust or shot of wind through this as this low pressure moves through the area here. So we'll look at some of those wind speeds here soon too. Right now here is SeaTac. So it looks like somewhere around 40 miles per hour. The mean is just over 40, and the wind might be a bit prolonged, as you can see there. It looks like Friday morning through actually Saturday evening for the SeaTac there. Going into Portland, you can see the wind's a little bit higher, the mean into the 40s there, with an outside chance of a 50 mile per hour gust, so you can get some nuisance power outages out of that as this system moves through. Here's Astoria, look at that on the Oregon coast. The mean is approaching 50 miles per hour, so plenty windy out there. Nothing extremely strong or out of the ordinary. Newport, much stronger down there, well into the 50s. Potential for a 60 mile per hour gust down there on the southern Oregon coast. So heads up if you're out and about, if you want to go watch the storms, the Oregon coast is the place to be tomorrow morning. Quilly, you can see the low tracks a little bit further south in Quilly, so they're not going to get really much strong wind out of this. The mean is less than 40 miles per hour, so very garden variety out there. As you can see, the areas south are going to get stronger winds. This is for Bowerman Airport. You can see 50 miles per hour is about the mean there. Pendleton, check it out. You're up towards 50 miles per hour also. This is for Friday, late morning into afternoon. So heads up, the crazy winter weather continues out there for eastern Oregon, and we'll look at some of the precip totals here coming up here shortly too for areas out there. Spokane, over 40 miles per hour. Some of those outlying ensembles have up to 50 miles per hour. So, and that is for Friday late morning into afternoon also. So watch out for nuisance power outages there. Now let's dive into some of the precipitation totals. As you can see, this is the HRRR, and this is just 24 hours. Some of these rates and totals are extreme. I mean, they're calling for up to 7 inches in some of these locations in the higher terrain in the Cascades, and the Willapa Hills and the south slopes of the Olympic Mountains. Checking out the rainfall totals on the NAM3 cam for the next 24 hours. You can see the big totals over the higher terrain. Even has Bellingham getting up around the 2-inch mark, so we got to watch out there. And look at the Willapa Hills, just some extreme totals, over 6 inches in there. South slopes of the Olympics, coastal range for Oregon, Cascades. And as we look at the excessive rainfall outlook, you can see there's a large area of western Washington highlighted here. This is risk of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles of a point. There's 10 to 20% chance of any area in there exceeding that limit. You can see this is for mainly localized. The most vulnerable areas are going to be urban roads, small streams and washes. Isolated significant flash floods are possible, so heads up if you're out on the roadways. There's a mesoscale discussion earlier today. It talked about the localized threat for some landslides even. So looking at the landslide index here, you can see Seattle and Tacoma are on the north side of this, or SeaTac Airport anyway. Boeing Field and Payne just below the line. You don't want to be on the right side of this index line. That means you are more susceptible to landslides. So with all the recent snow melt and all this precipitation occurring, landslides are at an increased risk now. And looking at Bowerman Airport here, Hoquiam, look at this rainfall. I mean, the control's calling for over 4 inches in a 24-hour period. So heads up. Seattle, Tacoma, the control is just over 2 inches. The mean is less, but still a significant rainfall event going on right now. These are for totals ending on Thursday night. And here's Bellingham. Not as much as the NAM3 cam, but still calling for over 1 inch of rain. Olympia, and again, the higher terrains around these airports are going to have much higher precipitation totals, but Olympia, 3 inches in a 24-hour period, that's significant. You get some serious urban flooding in these conditions. Portland, lesser amounts, 1 inch generally, so not too bad there. But again, you have to watch river runoff from the Cascades if you have any concerns with those. Chehalis Airport, so we're talking about approaching 2.5 to 3 inches in a 24-hour period. We all remember what happened back in the 2000s when I-5 was totally shut down. This is a pretty significant event. I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but right now we just don't know. There's a lot of rain pouring into the region right now, especially southern Washington. So that needs to be watched. And here, let's just dive into the extended now. So we are looking at, this was the current temperature anomalies over British Columbia. And as we go into the future here, you can see we get the warm up going on here, and you can see the cold signal for the eastern half of the US there. Cold air building up over Alaska. Then look at the change. Here we are into early February again, and look at that signal for British Columbia again. You know, this model was run a few days ago. There's another one running this afternoon. So we'll check back on that for tomorrow's video, or maybe I'll do a live stream tonight and we'll cover that there. But you can see there's another cold signal showing up for early February, and what have we learned about February's here in the Pacific Northwest? 2 out of the last 3 have been huge snowmakers, so maybe we'll be on that path again. So maybe we'll just do a live chat on, make that the highlight tonight. And if we look at the Pacific North American oscillation, you can see with that colder air around, we were negative for a while there. And I believe this is January 6th. You can see into the future, we start to go negative again. And this is for the later half of January. We start to go negative again. And I'll show you what that means here in a minute. We have the East Pacific oscillation, which also, if you want snow and cold weather, you want it to go negative again. So again, look at this. Second half of January, it looks like the trend is showing potential for some more cold in the Pacific Northwest. And this is the GFS extended here too. And you can see it has that signal for British Columbia, Washington for the cold in early February. So, you know, this is something to look forward to. If you're a snow lover, it might, you know, we could be trending that way again. Again, this is a long way off, and these are just, you know, these are just signals right now. So it's just something to watch, just a little bit of hope for snow lovers. And so in a positive EPO pattern, you can see you get warmer in the East Coast here, and colder generally bottled up in Alaska. But this isn't what brings us our Arctic outbreaks though for the Pacific Northwest. A mild one for the lower 48. We're probably in a southwest flow here. So as we go into a negative though, you can see the Alaska Ridge, and it's that ridge out over here that we had during the cold streak, if you remember during my briefings then, which just drives that north flow and it allows cold air intrusions into the lower 48. And sometimes those can bank up in British Columbia and get down into Washington and Oregon. So that's what we're looking at there. That's what I mean when we talk about these teleconnections here going into negative territory. When you're in negative, you build that ridge out over the Pacific more and you get that north flow, and colder weather can intrude into the lower 48. So that's what we're looking at now. But yeah, heads up on the flooding. We'll do a live chat tonight and we'll kind of look at the extended again. We should have the new European weeklies, and let's see if they show the same. And thanks for all the support, you guys. I'm getting a lot of good comments, a lot of subscribers, and I hope to keep spreading the weather awareness. And check back on Twitter, and I will see you guys tonight in the live chat. Thanks a lot.